Today I'm working on the 2008 Jetta 2.5 engine, and here we have to replace the intake manifold gaskets. Once the car warmed up, it was sucking air from the intake manifold, and I've already taken this job apart. These are the rings for the gaskets here. I've already inserted them. I was not gonna make a video on this job because I had to get it out of here quickly, but one thing made me do this. I don't like what I call poor designs, or designs where they haven't thought things out and just make things difficult. I will show you this on the bottom of the intake manifold, right here and right here. There are two screws that go in through this bracket down here, right, to anchor the front part of the gasket, the part closest to the radiator, to the manifold, the part of the manifold that closest to the radiator. Let me make it clear. And these screws go in from the bottom of this bracket. Now, there's very little space between here and the manifold, about that much gap. To get your hand in there, reach under to do this job is difficult. So what I suggest you do is go down, jack the car up, set it on jack stands, go underneath it, remove the splash guard from underneath, and get yourself a long extension with the ratchet and the appropriate tool to fit this nut. That's a 12.8. I will show you the tool in a minute. Okay, here we go. This is the screw right here, which I dropped. I'm just dropping things all over the place, right? The depth of that screw is only about, I would say, maybe 1/4 inch. This tool only goes in that far. Now, if you don't get it in right and you try to turn that, you might end up stripping the splines up in that. This is number 8, and I believe there's 12 points on this. All right. So make sure you take your time. I got one out very easily. The other one just wouldn't come out. I ended up stripping it. Now it's very difficult getting up in there to use any other thing to try and loosen that screw. What I ended up doing is borrowing a tool. This tool that I'm about to show you is similar to what people use when they have a wheel lock on a wheel and can't get it off, or I've lost the key for that. This is the tool right here. What you have to do is get one of these, put it on a long extension, get yourself a hammer, and tap it onto the screw from the bottom. Tap it up. When you tap it, it'll bite into the exterior of this screw, and then you can turn it and loosen it. Okay, I think if they have put a hex screw right up in there, hex head screw, that would have been a lot easier. I can see using something like this in an area where you cannot get a socket or a wrench in, but to me there is no reason to use something like this in a problematic area like that, a tight area. Okay, I'm gonna try and backtrack and show you how I took this manifold off. Well, first of all, once you have this manifold off, you should replace the thermostat. It makes no sense having to take all of this off in the near future, to replace a thermostat. All right? And while you're at it, check all these hoses and make sure there's a pipe here. Shouldn't have a problem with it. You could leak some fluid from around the O-ring that goes on the end of this pipe. If that's the case, take this clamp off right here, pry a screwdriver underneath it, and pry this out. All right, this is all, it's like a U-shaped piece that's all that holds this pipe in. You pry that out, then you can replace the O-ring on that. Okay, there are several of these plugs that you will have to disconnect. Simply press or pull this back right in here. I don't know if you can see that little piece lifting up right about here. And then pull this off. If you have problem, push it in, push the whole plug in, press that, and then pull back. There's two down here. There's several of them around this manifold. All right, those two I show you go over here. One goes here and the other one goes here on the intake. All right, now I will sit this back in place and attempt to show you what I did to get this out of place. One of the things you have to be concerned with too is the dipstick guide. Once you loosen these two here, you will have to pry this bracket back somewhat so you can move this, and then move this guide back. It's on a pipe, it's hard to get out, and then you'll be able to lift the manifold up. Without doing that, you won't be able to clear this pipe to lift the manifold up. Okay, here we go. I got everything situated as it would have been if I had just started this job. Well, almost. You want to begin by, should be two screws, one on this side and one on this side. Loosen them. This car came like that. A lot of times you'll find these vehicles, the older ones, somebody have damaged this area here. So that comes right off. You want to pull this little plastic piece up as you pull this out. Once you have that disconnected, grip this cover on this side and on this side with two hands, one on each side. Lift it, it pops out. Then you want to grab it in the back on the right side, back on the left side, and pop it up. Once you have done that, pull this out of place. Okay, now another thing, right underneath here is where your air filter is, on the bottom. You have a number of screws here to loosen this and take this filter out of here. You can replace that if you need to. All right, with that said, I'm gonna sit this down and we are gonna go to proceed to take this manifold off. This breather hose right here is connected to the valve cover. What you have to do is depress this. The lock is on each side. You will see a piece of plastic going down here to connect to this. Squeeze top and bottom and pull it out. Sometimes they're difficult to come out. If there's a problem, because it's an O-ring around there, sometimes get a little stuck, you can spray some lubricant on that and work it out. Once you have that out of the way, there's a little piece that holds it down onto here. Disconnect that. And over here, it locks into this U-shaped piece right here. Well, actually, it's a circle. And this is actually, if you press them together, they will lock. But if you put a screwdriver under here and pull it, you can dislodge that. Now this piece right here was connected to the cover that I just took off. Get a pair of vice grips, pliers, or the proper tool for this. That's a clamp tool designed for that. You can use that. I have it around here somewhere, but you'll figure that out. Okay, if you have the proper tool, then you know what to use for that. If you don't, just use vice grips or a pair of pliers. Once you have done that, what I did, I came over on this side. I disconnected this hose here. There's a clamp. You can do the same, use the same tool that you use over on the bigger clamp. Take this off and disconnect it right from there. All right, if it's difficult to come out, sometimes I grab it with pliers and just twist it like that. Spray some lubricant on it also. Or you can take a screwdriver, put it in between, and pry it gently. Get that off. You want to do the same with the line that goes to the fuel rail. Get that out of the way. And right over here, you have another connection that you can do the same as we did on the other side to disconnect this. Depress that piece right there, pull it off. Now, this hose right here locks on here like this. You have this clamp that brace that holds it on. You can just work it off. It comes off easily. You do the same over here. Twist it like that, get it off. And I disconnected it from here also so I could get it out of the way, because later on I'm gonna have to move this harness from underneath there. You can leave it on, but it's a little bit more difficult getting it out of that position. Once that's done, that's a screw. Where is that screw? Okay, no. This bracket right here, right, is attached to the cylinder head with two screws like this. All right, these are also 12 points. I call them 12-point Allens. What you need to do is get the proper tool, which looks like this. And this is a number 10. All right, to take those two screws out. Once you take those two screws out, this bracket will be free to move out. All right, now on this end of this bracket that runs across here, this end here wedges into a little, I don't know if you can see it right there, right into here. So if you pull that enough, I'll pry it out, you can get it out. But before you do that, disconnect the injector wires. Same thing, the plug, you depress that, then you can pull it off. All right, take all the injector wires off, loose from the injectors, and then you should be able to work this out without damaging anything. There you go, just popped out of that. See that? Popped out of this hole right down in here. All right, with that out of the way, and this out of the way, thank God they made these a little bit more durable than the older model. Some of them, as soon as they were 4 or 5 years old and you go to move them, they will crack. Now with that done, you can wiggle this harness from in between here. But the harness, you see this right here? There's a little pin on the end that plugs down into that hole. And there's one over here also. So once you pry this up here and pry this up here, this harness will be free to be worked out of that area. Then you can move all of this over. You don't need to disconnect that. Okay? Now the two plugs that I showed you earlier before I put this manifold back on to demonstrate to you how to take it off, are down here underneath. I left them on there until I loosened all the screws that hold the manifold in place. Let me see if I can show you them. There they are down here. Here, here, right along here. Okay? And there's one down in there on this side. And there's one down, no, two down here on this side. Now you have two more you have to deal with. One through this hole here and one through this hole. You will not be able to get the tool down in that hole to take that off. I don't have the proper one, so I made up one. I'm going to show you how I did that. Okay, the tool to remove the two screws that I was talking about that are not easily accessible because you have to go through these holes was like this. This here is a T30. You actually need a T40, right? But as you can see, that will not fit down in this hole. Okay, so what I did, I took my T40 tool with a punch through the backside and I knocked it out. This one did not have a pin going through to hold that piece in. It's just held in by a pressure fit, by a press fit. So I knocked it out. Then I took the appropriate socket, which I think, well, I have to, well, this is not actually a socket, but you can try a socket, the right size that will fit on there, because this portion of this tool is a hex piece. All right, this piece here, I believe, yeah, it's a piece that is used to hold, say, a hex or something. It has a magnet in here, but the magnet was not strong enough to hold this. I didn't want to lose my tool, so I put a piece of paper in there and wedged it in. You can buy these at a Home Depot or something. People use it sometimes to hold a bit while they're using and have this shank, this end here, in the drill bit, in the drill, so they can hold this piece here to drill or to tighten up something. Now with that done, I was able to, I'm trying to get this bit back in without cutting this thing off. I was able to get down in the hole. I made sure I taped this to that, put a little bit of tape, and when I was actually doing, I put a little bit of tape on here so I don't lose this bit down in it. If you lose it, you can always retrieve it after you pull the manifold off. All right, then I used long extension, 1/4 inch extension, and was able to reach down in and loosen those two. As a whole, you will not lose the screws that hold the manifold to the head because they have a little piece of rubber or plastic piece around it, so they won't come all the way out of the hole. Occasionally they might come out because that piece is damaged, but be careful when you're taking that out. Now with all of this loose, next move is to, right over here, same tool again, vice grip, pliers, or whatever you can use to depress this clamp. These two edges here, once you depress it, the clamp will open up and you can take this off. Okay, with that off and all these off, now you have to worry about prying this bracket back like I told you. And that should create a little clearance here. And you can proceed to lift this out of here. Now while you're lifting it, you might need to pry this even more. I can't show you the exact procedure while I'm prying and lifting because I have to use one hand to record and the other to lift out. So with that said, can get this out. Now I'm also going to replace all the injector seals because this is the best time to do it. All right. One thing I did not mention, this bracket here is held on by two screws, one through here and the other through here to hold it down to the injector rail, and the injector rail is held down to the manifold. That one screw holds both the rail and that other piece down. Okay, so we're out once again. All right, and the reassembly is the exact reverse. Have to put the manifold back on, screw everything down tight, and then proceed to put the wire harness that's attached to the metal bar in place. Run the two screws that I spoke to you earlier to hold that down and the injector rail down to the intake, and then proceed to connect your other wires and your fuel line, and you should be good to go.